There's a guy named Alex. He opened a restaurant. For his restaurant, he needed a new menu. So he tried to make the new menu. But for the first time, he failed. However, he didn't give up. So he studied. He read the books and he tried various ingredients in his new menu. He tried one more time whenever he failed, and he finally succeeded. He showed his new menu for the customers in his restaurant. Many people loved it. So, lots of people came to his restaurant every day to eat the new menu, and he earned lots of money. Never give up. Try one more time.
For the animation, I mainly use sine graph, the equation of the rectangle, equation of the circle, absolute value equations, and the linear inequalities. I mainly use sine graph for the things that are moving like a wave. For example, in the first scene, I use sine graph in the balloon banner. I set the domain of the sine graph to make this show from 10 to 110. Next, I set one of the sine graph 130 and the other sine graph 110 to vertically translate the equation and make it able to write the words now open. I put C in the equation where it makes the graph horizontally shift to the left or right side to make the banner moving. Also, I made a slider for C to control the horizontal translation. I mainly use the equation of the rectangle for the things that have the rectangle shape. For example, in the fourth scene, I use it to make the body of the bookshelf. 1.89 and 2.875 is the center of the rectangle. Also, the other two numbers, 1.89 and 2.875, is the ratio of the width and length of the rectangle. And finally, the number 2 decide the size of the rectangle. I mainly use the equation of the circle when I make the things that have the round shape. For example, in the second scene, I use circle equation to make the stickman's head. I put 40 and 35 in the place where decide the center of the circle. Also, I put 25 in the place where decide the length of the radius of the circle. I use the absolute value equation for the arm and leg of the stickman. For example, in the third scene, I use absolute value equation for the arm and the leg part of the stickman. I put 15 and 3 in the place where decide the vertex of the absolute value equation. Also, I put -1 or minus to make it open downwards. Next, I put 3 different absolute value equations for the arm part of the stickman because I couldn't show the arm movement by using only one absolute value equation. I added the sliders for the 3 absolute value equations. For example, I set the first slider to move 0 until 0.8 because if the slider goes lower than 0, for example like -1, the arm part of the stickman appears in the wrong direction. Also, I set 0.8 because 0.8 is the ideal number to touch the food. For example, if I put 1 here, it doesn't touch the food. And the others are similar to the first sliders. Finally, I use the linear inequalities to color the parts. For example, in the last scene, I use lots of linear inequalities to hide the words. I use at least 10 linear inequalities on each part of the color because only one inequalities is not enough to hide the words, as we can see from here. And also, I made the sliders to start from -5 and finish at 39 because -5 and 39 are the endpoints of the words. So I can perfectly hide the words.